Hey everybody, Jim and Tom here to talk about the 4 best deleted scenes and one we're not so crazy about from Star Wars The Last Jedi. It is now on digital, hits Blu-ray later this month. Tom, let's dive into it. The first deleted scene that we think is one of the best ones is called Luke Has a Moment.
And what a moment he has.
Yeah,
very emotional moment. Rey and Luke are having a discussion. Rey is trying to get him to rejoin the fight against the First Order. And Luke goes back into his hut and has this sort of personal, emotional moment.
Yeah.
He's crying, tears in his eyes.
We should point out that this is after the scene where he's like, that you see in the theatrical cut where he's like, where's Han? So he has found out off camera what happened to Han. And there's just a sort of an emotional weight that you see hitting Luke, knowing that his friend is gone. And the way that that scene in the deleted scene version cuts, it cuts from Luke at the table to Leia on the ship. Yeah, where it looks like she's brooding over a cup of coffee. Like It looks like she has a thermos there. Now you see that shot in the movie, but what's kind of notable about this is that by cutting between the siblings, it has a very different emotional effect when you see Leia. It looks like she's thinking about Han.
Yeah.
When you see the theatrical version, it's much more about the resistance because it's leading back into a big scene right before she slaps Poe.
For the opening battle sequence.
Earlier on in the movie.
Poe's questionable heroism during that scene.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was Luke Has a Moment. The second scene that we really liked is the one we're probably going to talk about the longest, it's called the Caretaker Village sequence. And this was actually really good, I thought. It's one of I think Johnson said one of his favorite ones.
Yeah, and there's some commentary on the Blu-ray that kind of lends a little more of an idea to why he cut it, and the reason was that it was just simply kind of killing the pacing at that point in the movie. We're about right at the halfway point in the movie at this point, and I think they kind of wanted to keep things moving a little bit.
Right.
And this scene kind of picks up from Rey's moment when Luke gives her the sort of not so true version of what happened between him and Kylo the night the Jedi Temple was destroyed. Rey sort of tries to convince Luke that she will not disappoint him like Kylo did, and then they go on to have this whole other lesson, which is this sort of attack on the Caretaker's village.
A raiding party, yeah.
A raiding party, they call it. Once a month, this party comes to plunder the village. And Luke kind of tricks Rey into thinking, yeah, they're about to destroy the caretakers or hurt them.
But the big lesson is about how the Jedi would not intervene. They would not become involved. That those old tomes up there in the tree library would tell you this, would back me up. Basically, is what he's saying, that that is not the Jedi way. You don't get involved.
Yeah, whatever it takes to maintain balance.
And of course, she bolts off down to the village, and we've seen some of that footage before of her running with the lightsaber across the rocks and kind of in the mist. And she gets down there, and it's not a raiding party. It's just a party.
It's just a party.
They're having this kind of like Celtic kind of what we would call like a ceilidh kind of big party with music, and they're dancing, and she slashes her way in and
just destroying more of the caretaker stuff. Yeah, and everyone's like, you're ruining the vibe. Like,
yeah, it's really funny. And Chewie and R2 were there.
They get her to move her lightsaber around like a glow stick.
R2's got like a, I don't know, like a shell necklace, something on there. It's like he was at a luau.
Exactly.
She then has a moment after that with Luke, where she basically chastises him for doing that to her, and he literally laughs at her at one point, like it was a big joke at her expense. And she's like, real friends are really dying here. And I believed in the legend of Luke Skywalker. I was wrong. And this coming in his face, and he looks crestfallen and shaken. Tell the folks what you think that means, why that registers with Luke, and what the larger point might be.
What my read on that scene sort of is earlier in the scene we hear him go like, oh, the Jedi would never have helped in this moment. Like they would have let the caretakers be killed and plundered. In that moment where Rey sort of chastises him and leaves, you kind of get the sense that Luke is having this realization that, oh, maybe even though the Jedi wouldn't have done this, maybe Luke Skywalker should.
Yeah, that they don't need the Jedi. They didn't come actually asking for Jedi per se. They came asking for Luke Skywalker. He's the guy who blew up the Death Star as much as he is the Jedi Master.
Right. Yeah, so it was really cool to see him sort of have this first moment where he's like, oh, maybe I do belong in this fight. And it would have been a really interesting thing to have that moment come at that point in the movie, because we really don't get a sense that he is going to go back really until he shows up on Crate.
Yeah, I mean, in the theatrical version, it seems like his mind is set and that a decision happens off screen or something like that. That's kind of the impression that's left. So I felt like this scene would have been, it's a fun scene. It's got moments of humor and tension and drama, and it's a real test of their relationship. But Rian Johnson said in his commentary for it that basically, yes, it was cut for pacing, but also that he believes that the same kind of emotional point was made by cutting from Rey saying to Luke, I won't betray you like Kylo did. And then they cut back. He thinks that the same point was made without showing that. I think I get his point with that, but I really think seeing Luke have that moment would have added that little bit something more, maybe for the folks that are so hung up with that's not my Luke Skywalker. Luke wouldn't do that. It's kind of a nice little nod that he realizes, wait, I shouldn't be this guy. Next scene is called the Mega Destroyer Incursion Extended. I would say that there's actually two halves to this sequence. There's one sequence which Rian Johnson likens to the Jack Lemmon movie The Apartment, where it's basically the First Order's bean counters, as he put it in there. Rose, Finn, and DJ are trying to sneak, they're dressed up like First Order officers, trying to sneak through just to get to the elevator.
Yeah, and Finn, before they get out of the first elevator they're on, Finn is like fixing up their uniforms because like DJ's craps all over the place.
Like, you guys don't look like officers.
Exactly. It was a nice little moment to see Finn, like, even though
he knows his stuff.
He knows his stuff. He was good at his job while he was doing it. That was a crappy job to have, but he knew
literally,
how to.
He was in sanitation.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey-oh.
So they're rushing. They get to the elevator, and the guy, Ralph Ineson, I think his name was, the actor who played the dad in The Witch. We see him in the final movie. He's kind of dressed like Krennic from Rogue One, and the whole thing is about get to the elevator in time and then close the door, that kind of scene.
You want to talk about who knows their job? It's him. Immediately when they walk in, he's like, those people don't belong here.
Yeah, you are not in accounting, get out.
Go Ralph Ineson, you know what's up.
But the part of the sequence we really want to talk about is something that Rian Johnson didn't really acknowledge when he set up that scene. He was all hung up on the bean counter part of it. We're more fascinated by, once they get in that elevator, close the door on poor Ralph, the doors open up behind them on the next floor, and in walk a big group of stormtroopers.
Yep, probably just had lunch or something.
Yeah, and they're just kind of all hanging out. They realize that, oh my God, we're screwed. It almost reminded me a little bit of the Winter Soldier scene where Cap is in the elevator and all the Hydra guys basically come in. Finn is basically kind of called out by this one stormtrooper standing behind him. He goes, FN 2187. So the guy knows, and they think, oh man, the jig is up.
Yep.
And that stormtrooper is played by Tom Hardy. It's his voice. It's been confirmed on like his Instagram. I'm pointing to what would be my phone. It's tucked away. And then he's got he knows Finn from basically boot camp.
Induct camp.
Tom Hardy's stormtrooper is 926, and they were in induct camp in batch 8.
Basically, it's this whole kind of false alarm where 926 is like, oh, never thought you'd become a captain. Good job, hi ho.
I know I'm not supposed to initiate contact with officers, but I never took you for captain material. Look at you, captain.
Yeah, it gives him like a butt slap, and it turns a real kind of like Marine hoo-ah kind of thing going on, and Finn is just clearly like shaking of like, okay, whew, that was close.
Right.
And we see DJ like actually cover up Rose's hand at one point, like she's ready.
She's going for a gun.
She's ready to go.
And it was really fun to, and we noted that sort of like possible Disney reference in that the Star Wars version of hoo-ah is hi ho.
That's it, hi ho. Woo!
I don't think that scene would have worked in the context of the movie. I think it would have been very jarring to suddenly hear Tom Hardy or the Southern stormtrooper thing.
It's a little
jokey. Trying to register all of that
in
a moment of tension. One other thing to note about that scene is that is the scene that Princes William and Harry from the British royal family were also in.
Yeah.
Apparently reportedly they played some stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's 3 big names that were cut out of that scene.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's move on from that one to, now this one did make its way online through the Star Wars show, but it's a fun scene. It's called Phasma Squealed Like a Whoop-Hog. Basically, this is the version of Phasma's death that wasn't used. You know, the whole thing is sort of her past coming up to haunt her, because he calls it out that, you know, basically you let the First Order Starkiller base get destroyed.
Right, because she calls him a traitor, and he's like, oh, you want to talk about who's a traitor?
Yeah.
You got Starkiller base destroyed. You let the shield down like that.
Yeah.
So,
and
then she kills all the stormtroopers that are standing around because she doesn't want that secret to get out.
We even see her hand get cut off, too. Like, and she just shakes it off. She doesn't squeal like a whoop-hog, come to think of it, when she gets her hand cut off.
Yeah, Phasma's kind of too cool for school, so if she's getting her hand cut off, she's like, well, whatever.
But the commentary is interesting because Rian Johnson explains kind of why they cut it. It was, again, for pacing, and then that they actually did, the other scene was a pickup, like a reshoot. And I have to say, I'm with the majority of people who think this was a better scene than the one that ended up in the movie. I think it's a better exit for Phasma, and I think a little bit more open-ended as to whether or not she could have survived.
Yeah, I think so, because the area that they show her being sort of blasted off to it looks like, yes, she could have survived.
You don't see her falling down into a pit of fire. So those are the 4 best deleted scenes in the Star Wars Last Jedi digital and Blu-ray releases.
Let's talk about the one we freaking did not like.
Oh God. Okay, so I think you'd be hard-pressed to find people who are big fans of Canto Bight, but particularly the Fathier chase.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, that thing went on forever in the movie.
Yeah.
And I like Last Jedi.
I do too.
This is even longer. Dude, it felt like it was like 10 minutes longer.
Yeah, it really, really drags. And yes, for all the sort of criticism there is about the Canto Bight sequence as a whole, I think it's pretty easy to argue why that does belong in the movie. But like, it's always been my opinion that the Fathier scene was just too long and too much in the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
But what is on the Blu-ray is just like, it's everything.
Brutal. Yeah.
It's everything Rian Johnson thought maybe we could possibly have.
He said this was the first try.
Yes.
If this was the full sequence, there's plenty of unfinished shots,
VFX,
everything like that.
Yep.
But my God, it just goes on, and there's really no. Like, the point is made, even in the theatrical version, which is still too long in my opinion. This while it gave you some better ideas of creature design and costume work and stuff like that, like, I appreciate the artistry that went into it.
Oh yeah, that's a separate conversation.
But it didn't, in terms of pacing, it really would have bogged down the movie. I mean, just watching it as a deleted scene, you and I were getting antsy.
We're like,
is this still going?
Yeah, is this still going? Like,
yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was nice to see, and Rian Johnson in the commentary is very cognizant of, like, this was never all going to go in the movie, but you know, as a filmmaker, you want to have more to work with than you need, so you can pick and choose the best. He had a lot to work with, and he probably still used too much. So an interesting look at something that we are all, I'm sure, glad didn't make it to the movie in full.
So those were our picks for the 4 best deleted scenes from Star Wars The Last Jedi, as well as the 1 really bad one. So for more of the movie, check out the review, as well as all the Easter eggs and references we caught in the film. And as always, be sure to follow and subscribe on whatever platform you like to watch IGN.